The moment you begin chasing what should naturally come to you, you surrender your power before the battle has even begun. Look carefully at the people history remembers. Kings, emperors, great generals, master strategists. There is one strange pattern almost nobody notices. They rarely begged. They rarely chased. And they almost never lost control of their emotions in public. Yet somehow, people followed them, respected them, feared them, even admired them. Why? Was it wealth, power, fame? No. Those were only the results. The real source of their influence was something much deeper. It was their ability to remain emotionally unshaken. Centuries before modern psychology gave it a name, Niccolò Machiavelli had already recognized it. He understood that the person who constantly chases approval eventually loses authority. The person who desperately explains himself usually weakens his own position, and the person who cannot control his emotions will eventually become controlled by someone else. This wasn't merely political advice. It was a law of human nature, one that still governs relationships, business, leadership, and even the quiet battles we fight every single day. Imagine Florence, the heart of the Renaissance. Its streets overflow with merchants, artists, bankers, and politicians. Every conversation is a negotiation. Every smile carries a purpose. Every alliance can disappear before sunset. This city doesn't reward the loudest voice. It rewards the calmest mind. Young Niccolò Machiavelli walks through these streets, watching more than speaking. Others admire expensive clothes. He studies people's reactions. Others believe speeches. He watches behavior. Others chase powerful men hoping to gain influence. He notices something fascinating. The most powerful men rarely chase anyone. People come to them. Why? Because power creates gravity. Just as planets orbit the sun, human beings naturally move toward certainty, toward confidence, toward emotional stability, never toward desperation. Most people unknowingly destroy their own value, not because they lack talent, but because they communicate one dangerous message. I need you more than you need me. That sentence is almost never spoken aloud. It is revealed through behavior, repeated texting, constant explaining, always saying yes. Fear of rejection, fear of silence, fear of being forgotten. Every desperate action quietly announces something. My happiness depends on your response. Machiavelli believed that dependence was the beginning of weakness. Because the moment another person controls your emotional state, they possess a form of power over you. And power, once surrendered, is rarely returned freely. History repeatedly proves this lesson. Consider Cesare Borgia, one of the most brilliant political figures Machiavelli ever observed. Borgia never begged rival leaders for loyalty. He created circumstances where loyalty became the logical choice. He never chased respect. He built strength until respect arrived on its own. His confidence wasn't loud. It was calculated. Every movement communicated certainty. Every silence carried meaning. Every decision reinforced authority. Machiavelli watched him carefully, not because Borgia was perfect, but because he understood something timeless. People instinctively follow emotional certainty, even when they disagree with it. Modern psychology calls this emotional regulation. Your nervous system constantly communicates information before you ever speak. Confidence, fear, neediness, calmness, anxiety. Other people detect these signals almost instantly, long before logic enters the conversation. This explains something many people find unfair. Why does one person enter a room, say very little, yet immediately command attention, while another speaks constantly and is completely ignored. The difference isn't volume. It is presence. Presence comes from inner stability, not outer performance. Think about water. When the surface is perfectly still, it reflects everything clearly. When constantly disturbed, nothing becomes visible. The human mind works the same way. A calm mind observes. A desperate mind reacts. One creates influence. The other creates dependence. Machiavelli believed reaction was one of the greatest weaknesses any leader could possess. Because predictable people become controllable people. Notice how ordinary people behave when ignored. They panic, send another message, explain themselves, seek reassurance, demand attention. But powerful individuals often choose something entirely different. Silence, not to manipulate, but to observe. Silence creates information. Who reaches out first? Who becomes impatient? Who loses emotional control? Sometimes doing nothing reveals more than endless action ever could. This is why Machiavelli valued patience above excitement. Patience protects judgment. Excitement often destroys it. The impatient investor buys at the wrong time. The impatient leader starts unnecessary wars. The impatient lover mistakes attention for affection. The impatient businessman accepts bad deals simply to avoid waiting. Patience isn't inactivity. It is disciplined restraint. A skill that separates rulers from followers. Now ask yourself one uncomfortable question. How many decisions have you made simply because you were afraid to lose someone? A relationship, a friendship, an opportunity, a client, approval, respect. When fear becomes your motivation, you begin negotiating against yourself. Little by little, you lower your standards. You compromise your values. You chase harder, until, eventually, you no longer recognize the person staring back at you. Machiavelli warned against this long before modern psychology existed. Because he understood one painful truth. The more desperately you pursue something, the more obvious your dependence becomes. And dependence invites exploitation. But there is another side to this story. Stopping the chase does not mean becoming cold. It does not mean becoming arrogant. It does not mean pretending not to care. It means refusing to let your emotions become someone else's weapon. True power is not the absence of emotion. It is the mastery of emotion. And that mastery cannot be borrowed. It must be built. Day after day. Choice after choice. Silence after silence. Until your peace no longer depends on anyone else's approval. This was the first lesson Machiavelli learned in the dangerous courts of Renaissance Italy. Power never belonged to the loudest man. It belonged to the one who remained composed, while everyone else surrendered to emotion. And once you understand that, everything changes, because you stop asking, "How do I make people choose me?" and begin asking, "How do I become someone who never needs to chase?" That single question can change the course of an entire life. The strongest man in the room is rarely the loudest. He is the one who never needs to prove his strength. Imagine standing inside the palace of Cesare Borgia. The room is filled with generals, noblemen, ambassadors. Every man is trying to impress someone. One speaks louder. Another boasts about his victories. A third promises impossible things to gain favor. The room is full of words. But, in the corner, Cesare Borgia simply watches. He says very little. Yet when he finally speaks, everyone becomes silent. Machiavelli witnessed moments like these repeatedly. And he noticed something extraordinary. Authority is rarely created by talking. Authority is created by emotional certainty. The man desperate to prove his value quietly admits he doubts it himself. The man who truly knows his worth rarely feels the need to announce it. Rule 1. Powerful people never explain themselves excessively. Most people are terrified of being misunderstood. So they explain. Then explain again. Then apologize. Then defend themselves. The more they speak, the weaker they appear. Machiavelli understood why. Every unnecessary explanation gives away emotional leverage. Imagine a king making every decision, then spending hours convincing everyone it was the correct decision. Would he still appear powerful? Of course not. Leaders decide. Followers seek approval. This principle still governs modern life. Someone criticizes you online. Immediately, most people rush to defend themselves. Long paragraphs, screenshots, arguments, hours wasted trying to change minds. Powerful people often choose differently. If the criticism deserves an answer, they respond briefly. If it doesn't, they continue living their lives. Because not every accusation deserves your attention. Sometimes, your silence says, "Your opinion is too small to disturb my peace." Rule 2. Never let emotion make your decisions. History remembers Julius Caesar for many reasons. But one lesson is often overlooked. Caesar defeated enemies because he usually remained calmer than they were, while others reacted emotionally. He calculated. That ability changed history. Machiavelli admired this quality deeply, because emotional reactions create predictable behavior. Predictable behavior creates weakness. Think about arguments. The first person who loses emotional control usually loses strategic control too. Anger narrows vision. Fear weakens judgment. Desperation destroys patience. A calm mind can see possibilities invisible to everyone else. That is why manipulation works. Manipulators don't control your hands. They control your emotions. Once your emotions react, your decisions usually follow. The greatest victory is refusing to surrender that control. Rule 3. Scarcity creates value. Walk through any marketplace. Notice something simple. The rarest object usually becomes the most valuable. Human attention works exactly the same way. The person constantly available often becomes taken for granted. The person who protects their time usually earns greater respect. Machiavelli saw this in politics. Princes who constantly sought approval lost authority. Princes who valued their attention forced others to value it too. Modern psychology calls this the scarcity principle. People naturally appreciate what appears limited. This doesn't mean pretending to be unavailable. It means building a life meaningful enough that your time genuinely becomes valuable. When purpose fills your schedule, desperation quietly disappears. Rule 4. Learn the strength of walking away. One diplomatic meeting forever changed Machiavelli's thinking. Negotiations had continued for days. Neither side wanted to compromise. Everyone believed agreement was impossible. Then something unexpected happened. One leader calmly stood up, collected his papers, and walked toward the door. Immediately, the atmosphere changed. Suddenly, the other side became flexible, not because they respected aggression, because they feared losing the opportunity entirely. Power often belongs to the person most willing to leave. The one who cannot walk away has already surrendered leverage. This applies everywhere: business, friendship, relationships, career. If staying requires abandoning your dignity, leaving becomes strength, not weakness. Now think about your own life. How many times have you remained somewhere simply because you feared being alone? A relationship already broken. A friendship built on convenience. A job destroying your peace. A partnership draining your confidence. Machiavelli would ask one simple question. If fear is the only reason you remain, are you truly choosing? Or are you merely avoiding uncertainty? Power begins the moment fear stops making your decisions. History gives us another example. Marcus Aurelius ruled the greatest empire on earth. Yet his personal journal reveals something surprising. He constantly reminded himself not to react emotionally, not to seek praise, not to fear criticism. His greatest battles weren't fought against foreign armies. They were fought inside his own mind. Different philosopher, different century, the same truth. Master yourself first. Everything else becomes easier. Perhaps that is why truly powerful people appear mysterious. Not because they hide secrets, but because they don't reveal everything they feel. They understand something modern society often forgets. Privacy is not dishonesty. Silence is not weakness. Calmness is not indifference. Sometimes, the strongest response is no response at all. Imagine two men walking into the same room. One immediately begins speaking, trying to impress everyone, laughing loudly, demanding attention. The second quietly observes, listening more than talking. When he finally speaks, the room naturally pays attention. Who holds greater influence? Machiavelli already knew the answer. Attention cannot be demanded. It must be earned. And nothing earns attention faster than complete control over yourself. This is why powerful people never chase admiration. They build character. They build competence. They build discipline. Eventually, respect arrives on its own. Not because they asked for it, because they became impossible to ignore. The greatest victory is not making people choose you. It is becoming someone who no longer fears being left behind. Imagine. The sun is setting over Florence. The streets slowly grow quiet. The markets close. The politicians return to their palaces. Inside a modest study, Niccolò Machiavelli sits alone beside a flickering candle. Years of diplomacy, years of betrayal, years of watching kings rise and fall, have brought him to one final conclusion. Power is not something you receive. It is something you stop giving away. Most people spend their entire lives trying to gain influence over others. Machiavelli believed the wiser path was different. Master yourself first. Because a man who cannot control his own emotions will eventually become a servant to someone else's. The final rule: build a life worth chasing. Think carefully. Why do people chase attention? Because they fear being forgotten. Why do they beg for love? Because they fear loneliness. Why do they constantly seek validation? Because they secretly doubt their own worth. The chase is rarely about another person. It is usually about an emptiness inside ourselves. Machiavelli understood this centuries before psychology existed. He realized something extraordinary. People who possess purpose rarely become obsessed with approval. Their mission becomes larger than their ego. And when purpose grows, desperation quietly disappears. Imagine two men. One wakes every morning wondering, who will notice me today? The other wakes asking, what meaningful work must I complete today? The first spends his energy chasing attention. The second becomes too valuable to ignore. Years later, only one of them naturally attracts opportunities. Respect is earned in silence. There is a misconception that powerful people never feel rejection. That is false. Kings experienced rejection. Generals experienced failure. Even Machiavelli himself was dismissed from office, imprisoned, and later forced into exile. He lost his political career. His reputation suffered. Many believed his influence had ended forever. An ordinary man might have spent years begging to return, explaining himself, seeking sympathy. Machiavelli chose something different. He withdrew. He studied. He wrote. Out of that silence came The Prince, the very book that would make his name immortal. His greatest influence was born, not while chasing power, but after losing it. Sometimes, life removes you from the stage, only to prepare you for a greater one. The power of emotional independence. Modern society rewards instant reactions, instant messages, instant opinions, instant validation, instant outrage. But history remembers people who could wait, who could think, who could remain calm while everyone else panicked. Consider the greatest military commanders. Before battle, chaos surrounded them. Soldiers shouted. Messengers arrived breathless. Fear spread through entire armies. Yet the greatest commanders often appeared strangely peaceful, because they understood a timeless principle. Your emotions are contagious. If the leader loses control, everyone follows. The same is true in everyday life. Families, businesses, relationships, friendships. The calmest person often becomes the emotional leader, without ever asking for authority. Power begins with emotional stability. The trap of explaining yourself. There comes a moment in every person's life when someone misunderstands them, criticizes them, judges them unfairly. Your first instinct will be to explain, to defend, to prove your innocence. Sometimes that is necessary. Most of the time, it is not. Machiavelli believed something uncomfortable. Not everyone deserves access to your explanation. Some people ask questions, not to understand you, but to control the conversation. Others criticize, simply to provoke a reaction. Every unnecessary response gives them exactly what they wanted. Silence is not surrender. Sometimes, silence is confidence. Because confidence no longer feels obligated to convince everyone. The greatest leaders were never available to everyone. Walk through history. Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Marcus Aurelius, Leonardo da Vinci. Different lives, different centuries, one similarity. None of them lived for public approval. They lived according to purpose. Purpose creates discipline. Discipline creates confidence. Confidence creates influence. Influence creates power. The order never changes. People often chase power directly. History teaches something different. Build yourself first. Power quietly follows. Now imagine yourself 1 year from today. You no longer panic when someone ignores your message. You no longer explain yourself to people determined to misunderstand you. You no longer sacrifice your peace to keep everyone happy. Instead, you spend your mornings building knowledge, your afternoons improving your craft, your evenings protecting your mind. Little by little, people notice something different. You speak less, but your words carry more weight. You react less, but your decisions become stronger. You chase less, yet opportunities begin finding you. Nothing magical happened. Only one thing changed. You stopped depending on external approval. The moment everything changes, there is a sentence hidden inside almost every powerful life. I have nothing to prove. Not because they are perfect. Not because they know everything. But because their identity no longer depends on applause. When praise comes, they remain steady. When criticism comes, they remain steady. When success arrives, they remain humble. When failure appears, they remain disciplined. That emotional consistency becomes impossible to manipulate. And once a person reaches that point, power no longer comes from titles. It comes from presence. The final lesson. Machiavelli never taught people to become cold. He taught them to become impossible to control. There is a profound difference. A cold person closes his heart. A powerful person guards it wisely. A cold person pushes everyone away. A powerful person chooses carefully who is allowed to stay. Power is not arrogance. Power is self-respect. Power is knowing that your value does not disappear simply because someone failed to recognize it. The moment you stop chasing what constantly runs away, you create space for what truly belongs in your life. And that is where real influence begins. Cinematic ending. So the next time life tempts you to chase, pause. Take one slow breath. Remember the streets of Renaissance Florence, where one quiet observer discovered a truth that still shapes the modern world. The strongest people are not the ones who demand attention. They are the ones whose presence makes attention inevitable. Because, in the end, power never belongs to the loudest voice. It belongs to the calmest mind. And perhaps, the greatest victory of all is becoming someone who never needs to chase anything except becoming better than yesterday.